Hello again. Okay, here we are assembling the new air handler. The sections are very heavy, especially the coil section, which was rated for about 1,000 pounds. It took us a minute to realize the best way to use the overhead come-alongs to lift each section up and lower to the floor, where they would sit flat, and that enabled us to bolt them up. And the gasketing will compress.
Right.
Where's those metal pieces? Here you can see Kevin and Ryan using a ratchet strap to pull the two sections together tight so that we can get them bolted together. Noah and I start to measure and cut the steel tube that we need to assist her up to the existing beams to hang the new unit from. The new dimensions were not the same as the old unit, so it was wider by about a foot or so. We used this heavy square tube and bolted to the existing beams, cantilevering off towards the block wall. marking the points where we're going to drill through these square tube beams for the threaded rod and the bolts, so that we can sister them up to the existing beams that are already up in the ceiling. Eventually Noah's going to jump up here to drill through these things. They're pretty thick. Rigging up the new unit. We used 2 beam trolleys instead of just one like we did when we removed the old unit, so as we could get it up high enough to clear the elevator gearing. There's only a few feet of room to work with under the web joists and above the elevator mechanical gears. You can see the beam with the 2 trolleys on it out in front of the elevator. Kevin begins to bring the unit up with the come-along, and Noah and Ryan are behind the camera on the other come-along. They're going slowly so as to bring up the unit evenly. I get up on the elevator to pull the unit in place once they get it up high enough to clear all the elevator mechanical. I don't actually remember removing the sticky mount from my GoPro, so it's probably still there. Here we already have the beam removed and the new unit hanging on all four corners on come-alongs. We have to raise it evenly to the right height and then mount the threaded rod from the unit up through the vibration isolators and into the steel square tubes. There's no room for bad measurements here. Let's see if we cut it at 55 inches. That'll give us. It's a tight squeeze, but one guy has to get on top, mounting the threaded rods and bolting them in. This installation was so difficult, being above an elevator, there simply was no other alternative. So, the only guy who was able to do it was George here. It's perfectly safe, though. Each one of these chains is rated at over 3,000 pounds, and the come-alongs are even rated for even more. This was a pretty tedious part of this install. We had to get all this just right. The unit had to be at the right height, it had to be perfectly level. If we didn't get this right, it would make it harder to put the ductwork in, all the piping, everything. So we had to spend some time here.
You gotta come way up, Brian.
There, wait. You're torquing my side now. Because okay. Ryan's come along is not really set good.
Oh.
So the higher up. Here you go. Finally, the unit's all mounted. The next steps were to fabricate and mount the new ductwork transitions to the mixing box and the supply. Once this is done, I went in and repiped the unit and mounted all the controls and sensors. At this point, without the ductwork on, is when you want to run your freeze stat. That's along those filters there. And then the next thing we did is mount the mixing box. Here is the final setup with all the ductwork done and the mixing box in place. We had JC Heating and AC come in and do all the fabrication and installation of the ductwork. George and I repiped the unit in copper and used dielectric unions to connect to the old black pipe. This is way easier and better looking than trying to redo it all in black pipe. Here's the final product. All the copper piping is insulated. Everything's good to go. I will say I did come back and spin that secondary pan around and ran that drain along the wall. As it turned out, I couldn't get enough elevation of the secondary pan above the main drain, and it would end up filling up the secondary pan with condensate. So I had to come back and redo it. Thanks for watching.